Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So it's the free hit video for Game Week 19, and with it being the final week that we can use our chips in, I'm hoping this team will help some of you out if you still have your free hit chip to use. Now, I am recording this video before Sunday's games have kicked off, and as a result, if there's any injuries, I will post alternative players in the comments. I do discuss different selections throughout. Because it's still partway through Game Week 18, I'm just going to use Game Week 17 data up until that date just because it give inaccurate readings for when I discuss the charts. I do make all my own charts and I have tried to alter and add in some extra information so they will look a little bit different to normal this week. I will discuss it and explain it as we go through the video. If you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this season, so if you can help with that, I would really appreciate it. Let's get into it. So free hitting in game week 19, it's your last chance to do it. So why might you do it in game week 19? Well, you don't have any other time to use it. I did have some comments on a previous video that people weren't aware that you had to use all your chips by the end of game week 19. And therefore, it's important just to let you know that if you don't use your free hit chip this game week, you will get another one for the second half of the season, but you do lose this one from this half of the season. That's same for any other chips you might still have. There are some big teams with good games. So for game week 18, all the sort of mid-table teams were playing the weaker teams, and it wasn't really big opportunity for big scores. However, this week there are some big teams playing the weaker teams in the league, which means there's a lot of high upside. So these are the teams we're going to be targeting this week. Liverpool at home to Leeds, Man City away to Sunderland, Man United at home to Wolves, and Newcastle away at Burnley, I think are really good fixtures to target, even if, say, for Liverpool, they're not necessarily playing that well. Leeds defensively, say, quite vulnerable, and the same can be said for sort of Newcastle away at Burnley. It's not necessarily that you're targeting Newcastle as a good team, it's the fact that you're targeting Burnley as a weak team, and you could get in these players. So in goal, I've gone for Lamens from Man United. And some of you might be thinking, why on earth have you done that? Well, again, it's really just because Wolves at home, I think, is too good a fixture to pass up. I also think that you're less likely to want three outfield Man United players than you are, say, three outfield Man City players or Liverpool players by going for one of their goalkeepers. Man United have just kept their second clean sheet of the season, and I think it's a good time to get on him. They did look really solid, and part of a free hit is going for these players you wouldn't own otherwise. So I can't imagine at 1.7% owned, a lot of you owning Lamens as it is already. So let's take a look at the chart, and we're looking at clean sheets versus expected goals conceded for goalkeepers. Now, these goalkeepers have played every week for the last 6 game weeks, so they're the ones we want to be guaranteeing on a free hit you're getting players that are playing. I've also included saves into this chart, so essentially the bigger the circle is, the more saves they've made in the last 6 weeks. The colour is the pricing, so you can see the pricing down the right hand side as well. So really this chart is showing you 3 or 4 bits of information in just one chart. So be interested to let me know what you think of it, and feel free to pause this video at any point to take a look at the charts in more detail. So on this chart, we really want to be looking at a goalkeeper from this section. However, there's not a ton of goalkeepers there. We've got Raya and Allison, and Raya just isn't making as many saves as you would want from a goalkeeper. Allison is probably the best option. But like I said, you're probably going to want a TK, maybe a Verts, possibly a Liverpool defender in your free hit team. And therefore, is there really space for Allison? That's why I'd be going for Laments. Now, again, no clean sheets because this data is just up until game week 17, doesn't include his game week 18 clean sheet. But what we do know is that we can see there's a big separation for expected goals conceded between Laments and the rest of the goalkeepers. So I think that does factor into it, really. You also have to look at these charts and say, well, it includes the last 6 game weeks, but what about just a one-off game? We're not wildcarding here, so we're not looking for those goalkeepers who are necessarily performing better over a longer period of time. We're looking for just 1 week hits that we can get in that we think has a really good chance of keeping a clean sheet. If you weren't going for Lamens, I think you could go for Pickford. Really consistent, kept another clean sheet in game week 18. He was in the wildcard team, sorry, the free hit team video last week, and I think Everton just are performing well defensively, a lot better than they are doing from attack. He is a bit more expensive, so I think if you did have half a million spare, you could totally upgrade to Pickford with Nottingham Forest away. I think that's still a good fixture. So let's move on to the defenders. And as we can see, I've gone for Virgil van Dijk, but not only that, I've actually gone for the double up on the Liverpool defence. And again, you might be thinking, why are you doing that? Well, for me, it's mainly a lack of alternative options. I think the next best defence this week from the teams we're trying to target is Man City. But they're away at Sunderland, and I don't necessarily see that as being better fixture for the clean sheets. I think Kanate and Van Dijk both offer good defensive contribution potential as well as good attacking threat. The same for Tior from Newcastle away at Burnley. I think all three of them pretty solid in terms of what they offer as individuals. And they're not necessarily against the strongest of teams. I know Liverpool have just conceded against Wolves, but the clean sheet potential is there. All three are playing teams who are quite weak defending set pieces, and all three players are really good from attacking set pieces, or at least get chances. So the potential for good points, I think, is worth the shot. I have gone for Dorgu on the bench, and I was making this this video, before the game week had started. So Dorgu was in this team before Man United had played, and before he got a goal, clean sheet, bonus points. So I can assure you, whilst it might look knee jerk, it actually wasn't knee jerk. It was one of those situations where I was thinking, oh, if he'd done that next week, I would have looked really good for putting him in the team. But he does represent good value. 4.1 million, you might even consider starting him. He's been playing further forward because of Man United's injuries and players at AFCON. So I think he is someone definitely worth a look. And I think if you did see kind of a free hit team this week, you probably would see him in it. So let's look at the charts, and we've got expected goals conceded versus expected goal involvements for the last 6 game weeks for defenders. Now, whilst goalkeepers had saves as their sort of third metric, we've got defensive contributions per 90. So the bigger the circle next to the player's name, the more defensive contributions they've got. So really, we want players from this section. We want players with big expected goal involvements and low expected goals conceded, with some big circles there showing their defensive contributions. Now, unfortunately, Timber, Munoz, and White all didn't play in game week 18, so they're not really the best selections to have. We can see that our three defenders at the moment are ranking here. Now, whilst it might not look like the best position to be in for defenders, a lot of this data can be a bit distorted if defenders aren't necessarily playing a lot of minutes. So if you've played 3 times in the last 6 game weeks as a defender, well, your expected goals conceded is going to be a lot lower than someone who's played 6 games in the last 6 game weeks. So we can see when we change this to all defenders. Now, these defenders have all started 6 games in the last 6 game weeks. So this really narrows the field down. The last chart looked a little bit busy, but we can see here that now these three defenders are looking pretty good. So compared to other defenders who have played every single week, their goals conceded data or expected goals conceded data stands out in a more positive way, I believe. Now, you could absolutely swap Canate for an O'Reilly or a Gvardiol, someone with a lot more attacking threat. And I think that's something that really is worth it to consider, depending on whether you want to balance out your midfield with a Verts instead of a Canate or a Cherky instead of an O'Reilly. So your options could be O'Reilly and Verts or Canate and Cherky, and that's really personal preference at this stage. So onto the midfield, and I've decided to highlight Anthony Gordon here. I think he's a good pick. Again, mainly we're targeting Burnley away than we are targeting Newcastle players. But Gordon is someone who has started and got 90 minutes in game week 18. So I think he's someone that we know is probably going to be at least second choice on penalties, along with Voltemada, a really solid option for Newcastle. I have decided to go for Cherky and Foden from the midfield instead of a Verts, mainly because Verts is like 8.1 million. So it's about 1.5 million more expensive than Cherky. So at this stage, it's what you can get for the value in your team. Is Cherky at that price better value than Verts at his price? I think so. And Cherky is definitely on more form than Verts is at the moment, even though he finally got his goal in game week 18 against Wolves. I've also gone for Cunha. I think Wolves at home is just a great fixture for Cunha. Playing his old team, we know what normally happens, regardless of the data. Players tend to score, and I think if the Man United did get a penalty against Wolves, you can be pretty certain that Cunha will be taking it. So let's take a look at the midfielder charts here. And again, expected goal involvements versus actual goal involvements. And then we've got bonus point score as the third metric here. So bonus point score isn't the actual bonus points, isn't the one, two, or three bonus points that players get at the end. This is the metric that players accumulate throughout the game that results in bonus points. So the higher the bonus point score, those are the players that end up with one, two, or three bonus points. And it really tells us that essentially who is doing the most positive actions on the pitch rather than just looking at bonus points. That's quite narrow. This really tells us whose actions are affecting their team more and whether they score or not. Are they being positive? Because if a player doesn't have many goals or assists, but they're getting a high bonus point score, that tells me that when they do get a goal or assist, they're probably going to get you some bonus points. Anyway, we can see the line of best fit here, and we're looking at players really who are above the line. They're kind of overperforming their data at the moment. They're the players that are on good form, but probably not sustainable over a longer period of time. So if we were on a wild card here, I would maybe say try and avoid these players for the long term. However, on a free hit, players who are just on good form with a really good fixture definitely ones to consider. Likewise, underneath the line, I think someone who's underperforming their data, even though they're not necessarily getting the points that you want, if they've got a good fixture against an easier team, that's when they can then convert those chances they've been getting in recent weeks. So here are the four midfielders we've got here. We've got Cherky, Foden, Gordon, and Cunha, all four in my team, and I'm pretty happy with the selection. We can see that Foden is someone who's really overperforming his data, and whilst he did blank in game week 18, I think he's someone that you can't ignore. Playing a Sunderland away, which, whilst isn't the easiest fixture, Sunderland have lost the most players to the Africa Cup of Nations out of any team in the Premier League, so it remains to be seen how they're actually going to cope when they play a team like Man City. The same can be said for Turkey. Gordon and Cunha are pretty much achieving what they should be. They're very close to the line of best fit. I think if you were going to go for a different player out of anyone, you could go for Verts, who's should be here, but name didn't show in the chart because it's just quite busy at that section. You could also go for a Pedro Neto just above. He plays Bournemouth at home, and Bournemouth just aren't in form at the moment and doing really badly away from home. So I do quite like the Pedro Neto pick as well. So up front, I've decided to go for a pretty big lineup in terms of Ekatike, Voltemada, and Haaland. Now, Ekatike is someone that you probably don't want long term, even with Isak's injury. Fixtures aren't amazing for Liverpool. I think he's someone that, whilst getting an assist in game week 18, Leeds at home, I think provides another good option for attacking contributions. I think the fact that Liverpool are playing two games in a row at home and Leeds playing two games away, and this is the second game, should also factor into this. The fact that Liverpool have just been training where they're used to training, sleeping where they're used to sleeping, and it's the opposite for Leeds. That should be taken into account. So here we can see again, similar to the midfielder charts, expected goal involvements versus actual goal involvements against bonus point scores. So the same aspect in terms of performance. Here again, the line of best fit and the three strikers here that I've decided to go for. Now, all three are doing pretty well for bonus point scores. It tells me that when they score, they're likely to get bonus points as well, which makes them much more appealing to go for than someone who might have a smaller circle next to their name in the same position. Someone like a Watkins tells me when Watkins scores, he's less likely to get bonus points than Voltemada. I might also be tempted to go for a João Pedro, similar for a Pedro Neto, in the sense that they're playing Bournemouth at home and you're really just playing the fixture there because Bournemouth just are not on form. But Pedro Neto is someone who I would be wary of going for. Doesn't necessarily get the big returns, at least not as big as the other three. So for me, those are probably the three strikers you should be going for on a free hit. And I would be surprised if you saw any free hit teams or any advice this week that kind of deviated from that. So overall, shout out to Fantasy Football Hub. This team rating is at 95%, really good team rating. Obviously, data's not everything, especially when you're looking for a single game week output. It's a lot more reliable over a period of time. For a single week, anything can happen, but we'd rather have a good team rating than a poor team rating, just to let us know we're on the right lines. So the team value is also 100.4 million. Pretty good team value. I do try and get these teams around 100 million just so anyone can afford them. Like I say, if you had more money, you could maybe upgrade to a Verts if you wanted to drop down from a Canate. You could also upgrade Canate to a Frimpong if you really like that, although Bradley did come off the bench in game week 18, so minutes necessarily aren't as secure as Canate's here. So the strengths of this team for me is that it's good teams with good fixtures. Like I said at the start, the big teams do play weaker teams this week, and rather than mid-table teams playing the weaker teams in game week 18, and it's short-term players, players who might be good for a week that you don't necessarily want to own long term. The weaknesses are it's your last chance. So if you haven't used your free hit, I definitely would recommend using it this game week. I think a lot of times people they look at free hits and they think they need to change all 15 of their players. You absolutely don't need to do that. When I free hitted, I just changed 7 players, I think, kept the ones I thought would do well, and had a good free hit. So if you already own some of these players in this team, whilst it might not be the ideal thing in the world, think it's okay just to make a few changes and then go with it. So let me know what you think about this team. Let me know what you think about the new charts as well. Always great to chat FPL. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. Please do consider subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one.